Well, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us again for another episode of the Your Blank What Now podcast. My name is Marcy Nettles and I am your host. I am so excited because what the show is all about is it's something to be able to kind of be a light or a guide or a direction on how you, no matter what circumstance that you're facing right now, can get your way out. You can see somebody else has done it. So guess what? So can you. And so I'm so excited about the guest that we have today. You're going to absolutely adore her. I do, I know. But Sandie Sato is just special. So let me tell you a little bit about her. First of all, she trained to be a gymnastics Olympian star. She battled eating disorders and body dysmorphia and survived cancer twice. Sandie learned the secret to true health and fitness. Turning her struggles into strengths, she discovered that fitness starts with a healthy mind and soul. Her expertise in this genre guides others in unveiling their dark shadows and self-discovering the internal dialogue that may be sabotaging the ability to achieve their optimal health, success, and happiness. Her philosophy is that inward fit begins in the spirit, using the mind in order to impact the body. So just from that, what I just shared with you, you know that Sandie is going to have some amazing stories that more than likely are going to resonate with one, two, or maybe all of you. So I am super excited and super blessed to be able to introduce you to Sandie Sato. And I've kind of asked her, it's like, please go just a little bit deeper. Share with us a little bit more about who Sandie Sato is. So hello, Sandie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. This is such an honor.
You are so special. So let me tell you, from the very first time that I met you and your amazing husband, Julian, you just inspire me because I mean, I've known you through a couple of these struggles that you've had here in, the last decade, and just the way that you carry yourself and the way that you have walked through this is inspiring and just really it's empowering. And please don't take that the wrong way, that I didn't feel empowered because you weren't doing well, but I was very empowered by the way you chose to live and be while you were going through it. So if you don't mind, let's backpedal and let's get into some of Sandie. In that description, you mentioned some things that were probably pretty difficult. Do you mind sharing more about those?
Oh, not at all. That's what I'm here to do, share. Um, you know, gosh, the journey of life, it's all about learning and growing and sharing and hoping that it does touch other people's lives. But just to kind of back up, I was a gymnast, as we talked about. And a lot of gymnasts struggle with eating disorders and body dysmorphia because of the pressures of pleasing and being perfect all the time. And to even go further back, it all starts with your relationships with your family and how you visualize or perceive yourself in those relationships. And I had a really strong, empowered mother, very overpowering mother. And I would say that that's where it all began. And because of that, I always wanted to please her. And then the contrast that I had was watching my sibling, my sister, who was resilient to her. She didn't want to do anything to please her mom. She was actually rebellious. And I saw her getting into a lot of trouble. So for me, when watching that, I learned, okay, that's what I don't want. Because at the end of the day, as human beings, we just want love and acceptance and connection. And I saw that that's not what she was getting. And so with that, I was able to develop this idea that if I please my mother and do everything that she wanted me to do, well, then she would love me and accept me. And as a young child, you're absorbing these learned conditioned behaviors. And you don't realize this is happening. You just think that you're being a good little girl. So in the process of developing this, you end up with this codependence, right? It's a codependent relationship. And then I find myself in gymnastics, and that just perpetuates it because you're competing to have everything perfected, to make sure the coaches like you, they approve of you, approve of your body. and you're doing it for a score and for the win. And so the ongoing perpetual understanding that if I please others and I perfect myself, then I will be accepted, loved, and adorned. And so that's kind of the dichotomy. And as I grew up and grew older, it was a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure. And that's where the eating disorders, the depressions, the body dysmorphia, that's where all of that falls into place. But that kind of just gives you a little idea of where it all started.
Oh, wow. So now I can totally understand, and I'm sure the audience will too, on why you chose the descriptive for your title of this episode, to be "You're dying to be perfect. What
Mm-hmm.
now?" Because that
Mm-hmm.
acceptance, right? And that score, you've got to make sure that you're living up to expectations of first your mother, your coach, your teammates, and then competing against those same teammates for a position. That all is just so
Yes,
compounding.
yes. And I liken it to a coin called acceptance, and it has two sides. On one side of the coin, it's people pleasing, and on the other side, it's people fearing. So we chase, we're afraid of not feeling accepted, so we run from the fear of not being accepted, but then at the same time, we're chasing by pleasing others. And in that, we lose ourselves sometimes. And I think it's a very common thing for a lot of people. I think a lot of people struggle with that. Because, like I said, we just want to feel accepted. And at the end of the day, the acceptance is within. But when you're a young child and you're learning these conditioned behaviors, you have no clue what's going on. You have no clue. So yes, that's my story.
Wow, that's amazing. So I'm gonna ask you to just kind of try to pinpoint a time, when you were going through this, when you were trying to be so competitive and to really perform at the top level that you possibly could. And I mean, you talked about the eating disorders and obviously not loving yourself the way that you deserve to be loved. Can you think of a time, or even two, if you can, to where you just really felt like you were alone and super discouraged, and you had that opportunity to either just break down and say, I'm done, I quit, I'm done, over all of this, or that choice to really break through and become, right? Can you think of
Yes.
moments?
Oh, wow. There's quite a few. But one, when I was training with Bella Caroli, and for those of you who don't know who Bella Caroli is, the Carolis, they were the Olympic coaches, right? Marta and Bella
Yes.
Caroli. Some of their image has been a little bit scarred in the most recent past, but nonetheless, back in the time, he had just gotten to America and opened up his gym. And this was during the time when Mary Lou Retton had just won the Olympics. And so the stars were in my eyes, and I just wanted to pursue that dream. And the pressure that people had, and the expectation they had of Sandie being this Olympian gymnast. Well, working under those conditions, was very challenging. He's Romanian, and so the way that they train is very unique. It's very hard, and it's not about love and connection. It's not about feel good. It's very militant, and much like an animal, you're trained. And I can remember one time I was on the balance beam, and Marta was coaching me, and I had to do this front flip. If anybody knows what a front flip is, it's you dive forward without your hands, and you're on this tiny few inch beam, balance beam, and you can't fall off. So she's watching, and sure enough, I fell. And she said, get back up right now, and do it again, and do not fall off. And so the pressure, and she says, keep doing it until I tell you to stop. Oh my goodness, just your spine, you're just like thinking, and I could hear my mother in her voice. I could hear the pressure of my mother behind that. And so I did it, and I didn't fall. I did it again, and I didn't fall. And I did it over and over and over and over again. And of course, practice perfect makes perfect. So I was doing it perfectly until finally she says, you can stop. Well, the next morning, I was laying in bed, and we had to be in the gym at 6 a.m. And I took one step off of the bed, and pain was shooting underneath my feet, and I couldn't walk. And I didn't know what to do. And all I kept thinking is, oh my gosh, they're going to kill me. If I don't show up, if I have any reason for not showing up, even if my eyeballs are falling out or I'm dying, it doesn't matter. You have to get to the gym. And the pressure to getting there was intense. So I called my mom crying. I says, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. I can't walk. I don't know what's wrong with me. My feet are hurting every time I take a step. The long and the short of it is I ended up going to the physical therapist. I couldn't make it to the gym. And what had happened is over and over again, compounding onto the balance being caused an injury. And from that injury, it was just bruised so much and so swollen, and I couldn't move. Well, when I got to the gym that evening, there was always, so Bella had the class A and the class B, the ones who were shining and the ones who I likened to be wearing the dunce hats. Those are the ones that for whatever reason were shunned for not doing their job well enough or for having injuries, or just he didn't want to be burdened with them. And so I was in the A, but then I got hurt. And when he found out that I couldn't do XYZ, he quickly shunned me over there. And I can remember the humiliation that I felt. I could remember the others looking at me with sadness, like, oh, now it's you over there. And I remember the oppressiveness of the other girls, young girls that were all there, you know, and feeling so low and like a loser, like you've done something terribly wrong. We were just hurt. We were just injured because of the gymnastics. And that comes with gymnastics. That's to be expected. But there was no grace, no love, and no mercy. And it was just being humiliated in that way. But there's a lot to be learned from those moments, you know, a lot to be learned. And it makes sense, you know, there are moments in my life today where it'll be triggered, that humiliation or that high expectation. You know, we grow chronologically and we get older and we have, you know, we get married and we have kids and we're adults. But emotionally, those traumas, those moments that you had that were humiliating, they don't grow up. They just stay stunted. And so every now and again, yeah, I'll remember and feel that humiliation and have to walk myself backwards, you know?
Wow. So how old were you?
I think at that time I was 13, 14, perhaps. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So at 13, 14 years of age, it was being so reinforced to you that as long as you performed, we accept you.
Mm-hmm.
But
Exactly.
if you can't live up to our expectations, maybe not what you're capable of at that moment, but of our expectations, then you're not. Then you're out of the cool kid group.
Exactly. And that's called conditional love. It's conditions.
Right.
If you're good, you're rewarded. If you're bad, you're punished. And that's a lot. That's a lot to live with.
So how long did this go on for you? How long were you in training for gymnastics?
Well, I've been training since I was 7 all the way through the end of high school. So predominantly most of my upbringing, my childhood, if you will. And then what had happened is I did injure myself. Aside from that injury, it healed. I did injure myself greatly to the point where I knew I wasn't going to be able to compete that year. So we decided, my mother, my parents, and I, we decided to bring me back. And I finished out my gymnastics through high school. And it was great. I had fun. It was like the joy came back. It was a different kind of training. It wasn't training to be perfect. It was training to have fun, you know, and that's what it should be. But through that, there was a lot of memory of the imagery of what the body should look like and the shame that came with the body as a gymnast. You know, just maturing into a young woman was, that's not the body you want when you're being an Olympian gymnast. And like I said, some of those scars, they don't heal on their own. If they're not addressed or if the person doesn't even consciously understand what it is that they're feeling, you know, then it's not healed. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, that's really interesting because many people that will listen to this will understand the difference between a physical injury and a emotional injury. Physical injuries heal, and they
Correct.
generally do it pretty quickly because our bodies are amazing creations, right?
Yes.
But when it comes to emotional, heart and mind injuries, those are the things that continue on for our whole lives if we don't recognize what's going on and really get the help that we need to be able to rectify that. And what's really bad is that that injury is then passed on to our children, and then it can be passed on to their children and become
Exactly.
something kind of what we refer to many times as generational curses, right?
Well
Yeah.
said. Well
Um,
said.
so tell me, Sandie, when did you recognize and that there was a problem with the emotional injuries that you've sustained, and what did you learn from those?
Mm. I believe I suppressed so much growing up, and I don't believe it was until after high school and I discovered the eating disorder, which, as you know, is just a coping mechanism. So a lot was going on in my home life. I had been trespassed by another family member sexually. My family had broken up, and we'll leave it at that. And so there was a lot going on that I couldn't control. There were things and circumstances that I couldn't change or control and didn't have the ability to control. And so through that, the coping mechanism became, well, I can control my eating. I can, decide what it is I want to consume and decide what I want to throw up, bulimia.
Mm-hmm.
It also was fed with, as you know, the body dysmorphia, the self-loathe that you have with yourself when you look in the mirror, and the shame that you feel about yourself and how it's wrong. So the combination of those two things, I developed a very bad eating disorder. And it lasted for several years. I got very, very thin. I was less than 100 pounds. You could see my bones. Um, I was I stopped my menstruations, which is very typical, when you're having an eating disorder. And it just got so bad that there was one night that I remember I was laying in bed, and for no reason, I mean, I didn't understand what was going on. My heart just started slowing down and I could not breathe. And I remember laying there thinking, I am dying. And I started banging my chest going, work, work, because I couldn't, it just felt like it was stopping. And I remember just waking up and thinking, wow, this is terribly not okay. Terribly not okay. But because I was so far gone in the eating disorder and the brokenness that I had subconsciously, that it carried on. I disassociated. And when I was having episodes of the eating binging and the emotions and the relationship that I had with food and then purging it to get rid of it, I continued that for even more years. And it wasn't until, so the dissociation was when I was doing those things, it was almost like it wasn't me. It was almost like that wasn't me. And a lot of alcoholics will agree to having that condition. They disassociate. They don't view it as themselves. Their mind separates. And so it wasn't until it got really bad when I started, and I had a friend of mine, I should say a boyfriend of mine, and he recognized the signs. And that's when he came in and said, I can't continue a relationship with you if you're going to continue killing yourself. And he was like an angel at the time that I needed, because I didn't have the strength to seek help. And so for me, that's when I sought psychiatric help. And that's where I realized the psychiatrist helped me at that time understand that a lot of this has to do with your upbringing and the things that you experienced and some of the shame that you're going through. So that was the beginning. And as you know, RC, life is a journey. So there's no such thing as a quick fix. You go through seasons where certain things might be fixed or adjusted, but it takes a lifetime to come to really, really understand all those childhood traumas, if you will. So much so that I ended up with cancer, which I'm sure we'll get into shortly. But that's the beginning of when I realized, okay, something is not functioning properly here.
Wow. And it is, and what's unfortunate about it is that everything that you were thinking and the things that you were doing was because you had taken on the identity of how someone else was thinking of you. not your true self and who you truly are as a person, and as a
I
child
love
of
that.
God, right?
I love that.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, because every single one of us, as a matter of fact, anybody that's listening to this, I just want you to know right now that you are the son or daughter of the Most High King, and He loves you. You are a child of God, and He loves you unconditionally. And the identity that He sees you as is perfect, as forgiven, as restored, as being His loving child, and that He wants you to know that no matter where you're at right now, you're not alone. And that
Amen.
there are people that have been through the things or similar to what you're going through right now, and they have made it out. And that's why Sandie's here with me today. And that's why other guests come on here, is to show you the path, just give you an idea of something that you can do to get you out of where you are right now. Because the sooner the better, right? The sooner the better,
Absolutely.
because when we let these things go on long enough, whether it is bad choices when it comes down to how we think about ourselves because we let someone else influence us so much, or getting into some sort of an addiction or eating disorder like you're talking about, the longer we let it go on, it leads to other things. So yes, we absolutely want to get into you sharing your cancer experiences. I mean, because you were young. You are young. You are a beautiful young lady, and
Thank
you
you.
have battled cancer twice. So
Yes.
tell us. I mean, obviously, you are an amazing wife and mother and grandmother.
Ah.
Right? Isn't it wonderful? It's the best thing ever, by the way,
It
guys.
is.
Being a grandparent is the best thing
Yes.
ever. And so there's years that passed between that boyfriend that spoke that truth to you, that got you to kind of open your eyes to there being something you needed to address,
Mm.
until all of a sudden your body was like, help,
Yes. Well
911
said.
emergency,
And
right?
that's exactly what happens, to your point, when things aren't realized. Those childhood traumas aren't realized, or the self-sabotage, the dialogue that's in our head. When we don't recognize that and we internalize it, well then yes, it has to show up somewhere. And in my case scenario, it showed up in cancer, not once, but twice. So just to backtrack, I loved what you said. You took on the perception of what others thought of you. And
Yes.
that's a sign of a codependent personality. And I liken it to, I call those filters, and different masks. There was the Sandie gymnast. There was the Sandie pleasing mommy. There was the Sandie marriage. There was the Sandie this. There was the Sandie that. The perfect Sandie. There's so many parts to us, right? And we put on those masks and we put on a smile. And I was taught through my mother, no matter what is going on behind closed doors, and it could be ugly, mind you. There was a lot of abuse between my family. My parents were very abusive to one another, so we witnessed a lot of that. But no matter how bad it was, broken noses, broken ribs, no matter what was going on, you open that door and you smile and you show everybody how perfect you are. Well, I learned to internalize a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. And so as I'm developing this codependent relationship with my mother, please her, do the tap dance, and she gives me the score. You're doing good. You're feeling loved and accepted. Well, that carries on into other relationships now, doesn't it? So during the time that I developed my first cancer, there was a lot of family turmoil going into in our household. We had a son who was dabbling in things like drugs, and he was very rebellious at the time. My marriage to Julian, which by the way is incredibly, we've been married for almost 25 years, and we've
Wow.
been through dips and highs and lows, and every bit of it has been worth it because we have fought the fight. But there was a time when we were questioning, do we really want to continue pursuing this? So much was going on, so much. But for me, I was fine. I was fine. I was fine. How are you doing, Sandie? Fine. How are you doing, Sandie? Okay. I'm doing great. I'm always great with a smile on my face, but on the inside, you're screaming. Well, one day I felt a little lump on my chest, and I didn't think much of it because like you said, I was younger and those kind of things just doesn't happen. I was the epitome of good health. I ate clean. Through the eating disorder, I learned between healthy eating and not healthy eating. So I was developing a very good relationship with food. And then I was exercising and I looked very fit, and you would never guess it. So I found this lump on my chest and I didn't do anything about it. And this is for the listeners, listen to your body. It's telling you something. And I
Yes.
didn't listen and snuffed it down. Oh, it's probably fine. It's nothing. And a year went by until I finally went to this amazing, she was giving me a physical and I said, I have this funny little lump here. And in the meanwhile, Marcy, it's growing and it's becoming painful. And I'm still ignoring it, thinking, oh, it's probably this. You know how we are with our Google MD. We diagnose
Yes.
ourselves. We know what it is.
Yes.
We'll just Google it.
Yes.
So I figured it all out. It was fine. And she was like, Sandie, go to the doctor now. And I was like, I mean, it can wait a couple more weeks because it was already December 15th. It was mid-December. I was going to pay a copay and a deductible at the end of the year. I was thinking, pragmatically. And she was like, Sandie, go now. And when I heard that tone, I was like, all right. And so the people pleasing side of me, not because I was doing it for me, but because it was like the coach, get on the balance beam and do that front flip and do it right. So I heard that tone. And so I went to the doctor to please her, to please my husband, to please everybody. Well, it was a good thing at that time that I did because I found out that it was a cancerous tumor growing. So we went through the first phase with a lumpectomy and the radiation and the treatments that go with that. But what's interesting is nothing changed. You go back home, you go to the same habits, the same emotional habits, the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same actions. Everything is the same. You're healed on the outside, you're physically healed, but nothing's changed here and here. And so we go back into that environment. And I remember one day I was so depressed and so in dismay. And I remember thinking to myself, and I might have even said it out loud, and this is where you really have to caution the mind and the things that you say and the way that you feel when you're saying them. I remember feeling so upset with both my husband and the son that was rebellious at the time. And I was saying, if the XYZ, and I won't say it, but if it were to come back, I would be so glad because I want them to be punished the way that they're punishing me right now, the way that I'm feeling, because I was in between this relationship. I was the tug of war, right? And so nothing, you don't think anything of it. But guess what came back? It wasn't but a matter of time, and another lump was found in the same breast. And went to the doctor, and they were like, yeah, it came back. It came back all right. And so even though I changed some of the eating habits and perhaps cleaned it up a little bit more, to my point, if you don't start from within, fitness, health, and wellness comes from within. It starts from within, and your emotions and your thoughts about yourself. And then it just exudes. To your point, we are a bright, beaming light, but we don't see that in us. We fail to see that in us. And a lot of times we look to others to give us that feeling of acceptance and love and beauty, but it's all right here. It's always been there. So
Yes.
that was really, I would say, when you asked me that question earlier, when was the first time you pondered something needed to be done? I would venture to say that was really when I understood, okay, if certain things don't change, this is just going to perpetuate. And they were saying if it comes back, it would come back somewhere else in your body. Then it just becomes a quality of life situation. And that's when I realized, wow, I'm killing myself. Subconsciously, I'm killing myself. It's a type of self-sabotage, just like with the anorexia. It's the same emotions. It's just it was being snuffed until my body was rebelling. So that's pretty much how I ended up with a cancer.
You know what? It's really interesting because our minds are so powerful, and the things that we speak out are the things that we get back. Right. And so
100%.
those times that you were saying, it's like, I wish it would just come back. Well, guess what? You got exactly what you asked for. Right. Um,
100%.
and when we think about speaking negatively, thinking negatively about yourself is really just a long-term suicide strategy.
100%. It's a self-sabotage. And that's why I
Yeah.
liken it to the bulimia, because I was killing myself in a physical way, but emotionally I was already dying. I was already slowly dying. That light was dimming out. And not addressing all those issues, I grew into an adult, and those same issues were just that it was just dimming out. So yes, it's a self sabotage is what it is. It's a slow death. And cancer, if you think about the quality of a cancer, what is it doing? It's slowly taking over and controlling you until you're dead. And that's exactly how my emotions felt. I felt like I wasn't living. I just wasn't dying, if that makes any
Right.
sense, you
Yes.
know? Just
Yes.
avoiding death, going through the motions of life, just going through the motions of life, doing the things that I need to do, but I wasn't living the way God
Yes.
wants us to live. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
So
difference between living and thriving.
that's right. That's right. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. Well said.
Oh, so good. So good. So during this conversation, I would really, I mean, just from hearing what you endured as a child, an athlete, and trying to live up to what your mother wanted from you, from the coaches, and ultimately what you probably wanted for yourself too, because you wanted it so badly for them, right? And then moving into the challenges that you had with eating and then needing the help from doctors to get you on the right track. It's like, what lessons did you learn? What lessons
Mhm.
did you learn? Because that's the thing. We can go through hard things if we're willing to look at those hard things and see what we can learn from them
Mhm.
to either be better for ourselves and our family or to be able to help other people. So what lessons did you learn
Mm.
in that those hardships?
Wow. Okay. So that's a lot.
It
Okay.
is, it is.
In this particular scene, I would liken it to the people pleasing. I would liken it to the emotional codependence that I had, where I would put myself down so much to please everybody else that I lost myself. I lost even who is Sandie. So that day or that moment when I realized, something needs to change, I had to think for myself, what is it Sandie wants? What is it Sandie loves? Who is Sandie anyway? And asking those questions, Marcy, for the first time, I didn't have answers to any of them. It was always like, well, what restaurant do you want to go to, honey? Well, I don't know. Which restaurant do you want to go to? Well, I'm in the mood for Italian. Okay, me too. What movies do you like? I don't know, honey. What movies do you like? Well, I like superheroes. Well, me too. It was the epitome of just losing myself in every relationship and having that codependence and just getting lost. It's like quicksand. And finally realizing for the first time, I need to open my eyes, just observe, and recognize who she is and what is my purpose. My purpose isn't just going around people pleasing, people fearing, and making sure everybody likes me, because on the outside, this is what they see, but they don't know me. They don't know the inside and that intimacy that could really be there if I was being my authentic self. So, in that learning, I realized that I had to learn to love myself, learn to love the essence, the light that's within, learn to realize that the only way that I'm going to love and serve God is if I love and serve myself first. It's the
Yes.
epitome of the oxygen mask for you first before you can give it to your child.
Yes.
So I had a lifeline, and it was for Sandie, from Sandie to Sandie. And I gave myself the oxygen, and I did seek help. There's nothing wrong with seeking help, folks. There's the best thing you can do for yourself is have somebody that you can talk to, somebody that will listen. And I did. I got a life coach and a therapist, and he's walked me through every step of the way of all the childhood traumas and facing those, what I call like the monsters underneath the bed, the parts of you that you don't even want to see. We run away from the ugly and the muck about ourselves, but I did. I dug in deep and I brought out all the yuck and the stuff that I didn't like about me and the stuff that I loved about me. And I just was like, it's like cleaning out a closet. I made this big mess so I can go back and put it in a nice little order. And so that's really how I worked through the learning and the growing. And it's not done. we're still processing and learning every single day because life is just a training ground. That's why we're here.
Yes, we're never done until he's ready to
Yep.
take us back, right?
That's
And
right.
then we're still not done. So it's all, yeah.
That's
So
right.
I absolutely love that you learned that you needed to love yourself, and you had to put yourself first and figure out exactly who you were, what you loved, what made you feel good, what you
Yep.
enjoyed,
That's
so you could
right.
truly be a full participant in any relationship, right?
That's right.
Starting with a relationship with yourself. I
Yes.
love that. So now that you know that, what is something that if you could go back and just give one hug to yourself, whether it was that young girl when she was 13 or maybe even earlier so that she wouldn't have to experience what she
Yeah.
experienced, what would you say to your younger self if you could
Oh,
go
that's so
back?
good.
If you
I
could go
love
back.
that.
Yes. Yes.
I would tell her, young Sandie, you are great. You are magnificent. The light is within you. I would give her a big hug and I would tell her, you don't have a need for others. You don't have a need for the people and the pleasing. You don't have to act and be. Just shine bright and just be the big Sandie that you are here to be. And that's what I would tell her. And I would give her a little token of my symbol, which is the rainbow, and I would say, grow and be the light. That's what I would tell her.
Oh, that is so perfect. And that is like an absolutely perfect message for every single person that's listening right now. Just
Yeah.
go and be yourself. Be the very best you that you can be, because absolutely nobody can do it better than you,
Amen.
right? And
That's
don't let
right.
somebody else tell you what you're supposed to be, because
Mm-mm.
they don't know you, because
Yep.
they're not in you, right?
Yeah. Well,
Seriously.
one of the things that I like to tell myself is if I'm hearing something about a perception somebody might have about me, and we have that with spouses, with coworkers, and I tell myself I choose not to accept your perception of me, and I tell myself that, and I remind myself that's their perception. They're allowed to have it, but I choose not to accept it. That's not how I see myself, and so that's one of the little things that I tell myself to get through those moments when their people pleasing wants to pop out.
I love it. And that's because you've figured out who you are. What is your identity? You know it. And so you're able
Yeah.
to be fully empowered and be able to live your life that way. I absolutely love this, how far
Yeah.
you've come. And I know that you have got so much further to go, not because you're not enough now, but because I see the greatness in you. You have
Oh.
got so much to give. And so that kind of leads into our final little question here. And that is, what are you doing now to really help others to be able to bring joy and maybe put a little bit of a light on an area that someone could really, you know, grow themselves? What are you doing?
Well, I'm going to tell you, Marcy, you were such a big example to me in reminding me what life is about and what I can do. And you did a post on LinkedIn, I don't know if you remember, and it had a list of all the ways that you can pay it forward. And that touched my heart because I think at the end of the day, it's not about changing the world. It's not about thinking, oh, I'm just going to be this great big person and make sure everybody knows how. No, 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 no. It's the tiny little things that every moment that the clock ticks, you can make a difference. So I thank you for teaching that or reminding me of that amazing lesson that it's the little things. And I'm going to tell you what I did the other day because of that post. I was in the park with my grandchild and I saw a bunch of trash because people were throwing their water bottles and everything. And I saw it and I remembered that list, pick up some garbage. The littlest thing can make a huge difference. So you know what I did? I went around and I cleaned up all of the garbage. And what a great example to my granddaughter, right?
Yes.
And so to answer that question, I think the best thing that I and anyone can do is look in the mirror, love yourself, and be the best you that you can be. And if it's just paying it forward in the littlest way with a smile or just listening to somebody when they need a listening ear, that goes a long way. And if I could change if I can be an assistance to any one person, just one soul, I have done my job. I'm not here to
Yes.
save the world, just one soul at a time.
Amen. Amen. So with that, how could our audience follow you or see more of what you're involved with?
Thank you for asking. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can also find me on Instagram and Facebook, the usual places. Sandie
Yes.
with an IE, Sato. It's that easy.
It's wonderful. Oh, I love you so much. And thank you so much for taking that post so literally and
Yep.
going out and doing it. Because if we would take that responsibility ourselves and just doing even just one small thing a day to make the environment, by the way, that was kind of for you too, right?
100%. Do you know how I felt? I felt like I had just cleaned up my room. Because when I first was looking around, I was like, oh my gosh, I see the trash. And you know how you cringe when you see trash? I looked and I turned around and I was like, look, I feel like I cleaned my bedroom and look how prettier it looks. It looks so pretty. Yeah, I was beaming. I was so, and you know what was interesting? The universe, God, I found like some change on the ground. I was like, okay, all right, I'll take it. As you know, I value even a penny. And so I accepted it. I gave thanks and I said, thank you. I appreciate what is given back. I just want to give.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I've used a hashtag for years now, and it's hashtag give more, get more.
Amen.
If you just start with the heart that you're going to be giving to others, you will automatically end up in the place where you want to be. So yeah, yes, absolutely. Sandie, thank you so much for just being an absolutely amazing and beautiful guest today. And your episode again is You're Dying to Be Perfect. What now? Thank
Yeah.
you so much for being my guest. And guys, go and follow her, check her out, because this woman, her by herself, is going to be doing amazing things in these coming years. They are definitely on a trajectory that you don't want to miss. And her combined with her husband, they are going to definitely be changing individuals' lives that will just be that ripple effect as they move forward. So you definitely don't want to miss out on it. Go and follow Sandie. And Sandie, thank you again for being my guest today on the Your Blank What Now podcast.
The honor is mine. Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you.